Okay, good morning, everybody. And Sherry, I just want to do a shout out to you and Chugash. I mean, this is such a beautiful facility, such a beautiful campus. You guys have done an amazing job for decades. So how about a round of applause for what the great work they've done. And Maylin, you've done an amazing job with that as well. I like Lisa's comment. I'm a big Frank Murkowski fan, but I could see him growling about the beautiful campus, and it is such a beautiful facility. To my fellow colleagues in the Congress, Governor, members of the Alaska State Legislature, so many community leaders here. This is a great, wonderful morning. Joni, Art, Wyatt, it's great to see all of you as well. And, you know, I think we know that Don Young loves so many things: God, country, Alaska, his family, hunting, a good fight on the House floor, of course, and he loved work and helping people get to work. And I think it's already been mentioned, of all the things that we focused on being named after him, federal building, of course, the rumbling volcano, which was very appropriate. That could blow any day, as Lisa mentioned. I think it is this Job Corps Center that is so critical, to reflects on so much of what he's done, because when you look at his career, it was all about getting Alaska to work. Now, this started from day one in his tenure. One of my favorite stories, and it is remarkable when you think about it, when he was a brand new freshman baby U.S. congressman, in the hearing on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline Authorization Act, he got an amendment through the committee in the House that said, hey, no more lawsuits, no more studies. We're going to stop and we're going to build the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. I mean, think about what Alaska and think about what America would have been or not been without that amendment that he got in his first 6 months in the House. TAPS would have never been built, and we would have had a very different state. You know, it's interesting. Some of you might know he was a very famous activist back in the day, in the early 70s, Ralph Nader, and he stood out of this committee after this amendment had been passed by this brand new congressman, and he declared this new freshman the most powerful member of the Congress. Now, you can say a lot of things about Ralph Nader, but he knew a winner when he saw one, and it was Don Young. I mean, it always makes me think, what would have happened had that amendment not passed? I tell you, thousands and thousands and thousands of good-paying jobs would have never come to the great state of Alaska. And it wasn't TAPS, of course, that helped Don Young's work completely transform our state and our country. A lot of you know how important the Magnuson-Stevens Act was for our fisheries, for Alaska, but for America, you know, but someone had to get that done in the House. And I always like to kid Don Young. He was the one who got it done in the House. Magnuson-Stevens, those were the senators. Of course, Ted Stevens. But it was Don Young and a guy named Gary Studs from Massachusetts. And I always said to Don, I think it would have been much better to have called that the Young Studs Act than the Magnuson-Stevens Act. But whatever, it wasn't known that way. But what was truly important to Don, he knew so many famous people, so many presidents, served with over 12. But what he wanted to do in his life was just help people. And this was a great quote that I loved from Don. He said, quote, "As long as you respect the other person and their beliefs, you can be successful. Whether I was in the majority or in the minority, I tried to work with people to solve problems. My job is to listen to what our constituents want and to help them get it done." Very simple, but very Don Young. And the Job Corps is just one of the many ways he helped Alaskans, everyday Alaskans, people who wanted a job in the training to get things done. And what a big impact this center has had. And like so many things, it was one of these battles that Don Young had to fight for. As Lisa already mentioned, this was not a done deal. As a matter of fact, the Department of Labor didn't think Alaska was big enough to have one of their important Job Corps training centers, and they were worried that it wouldn't be successful here. Well, they were wrong. Fortunately, Don Young was right, so he was persuasive. And of course, finally, one thing I loved about Don Young is that he had a great sense of humor. I mean, just look at this picture. It's perfect. Mischievous. He's laughing. I love this photo. And I'm reminded of one of the a phone call I had with then Speaker Pelosi right after Congressman Young passed away, and I was talking to her, and she said, "You know, Senator, I just want to recount one of the last conversations I had with Don Young. And we were on the House floor, and he had a bolo tie on, and it had a salmon, a seal, and a walrus." And she said, I walked up to Don Young on the floor, and I said, "Don, I love your bolo tie. Are you turning into an environmentalist?" And he pointed at the tie and said, "No, Nancy, that's just lunch." Right? So, finally, to the students here, thank you for your work as well. Our communities, our state, our country depend on your success. We need all of you. We have challenges, but I believe the future is bright. Hardly a day goes by without a story that's happening in Alaska dealing with infrastructure or broadband or military buildup or private sector investment that's happening in our state. We've all worked hard on that, the elected officials here, the private sector officials here, but it's not an exaggeration to say in the next 4 to 5 years, our state will be seeing investments easily north of $20 to $25 billion, okay? But we're missing one thing, a trained workforce. We do not want to be importing people from the lower 48 to do these jobs. This is where the young people here, the Job Corps Training Center, are going to be so important. So it's a great day to honor this center and the man it's named after for doing everything we can to get Alaskans working as much as possible as Don Young would have wanted. Thank you very much.